Redemption. Redemption is one of the most beloved tropes in fiction. People love a character who grows and changes for the better. These characters often become fan favorites. So far in my Final Fantasy journey, I have made my way through the first three games. While they have been charming, they have all lacked something distinctive. The deep character storytelling that I have always associated with Final Fantasy. We've had the epic storytelling parts, but for the most part, characters, especially your main party, have mainly been planks of wood. This has all changed with Final Fantasy IV. This is a story about its characters, and they are nowhere near one-dimensional. This is a story about the struggles of redemption, loss, sacrifice, survivor's guilt, and much more. A story about learning that the country you loved has become something else, and how if you truly love it, you will confront that corrosion regardless of the consequences. While this one has much more character storytelling than the previous entries, it also retains a lot of its signature elements. You will be dealing with the elemental crystals and fiends, and fighting an evil wizard with an even bigger evil behind them. For all its evolution, it still retains all that classic Final Fantasy charm, culminating in what is easily my favorite Final Fantasy so far. Without further ado, I'm just a curious skeleton, and let's discuss Final Fantasy IV. The creation of Final Fantasy IV was a little rocky. After Final Fantasy III, Enix actually planned to develop two Final Fantasy games, one for the Famicom and one for the upcoming Super Famicom. They were to be labeled Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy V. However, due to financial and scheduling constraints, they dropped the plans for the Famicom game and continued making the Super Famicom version, which was promptly renamed Final Fantasy IV. Sakaguchi has stated that the Famicom version was approximately 80% complete, and some of its ideas were repurposed for the Super Famicom game. Final Fantasy IV was Togashi Tokida's first project at Square as a full-time employee. He was one of the 14 people working on the game. He originally wanted to be a theater actor, but working on the game made him want to be a, quote, great creator of video games, end quote. You might know Tokita better as the director of some of the most beloved JRPGs such as Chrono Trigger, Live Alive, which was his directorial debut, and Parasite Eve. Without Final Fantasy IV, we might have never seen this giant of the industry realize his potential. Some of the biggest and most influential classics of the genre might have never existed. Hiromichi Tanaka, who was the main designer behind Final Fantasy III, was also initially a part of the development. However, his ideas for a battle system, which he wanted to be seamless with no separate battle menus, and not menu-driven in general, varied from where Final Fantasy IV was heading. As a result, he changed development teams and went on to produce and write The Secret of Mana instead. It's kind of amazing, the different classics of the genre that are all connected to Final Fantasy IV in some way. Everything around it just seems to have produced gold. It also speaks for how this time was one of the true golden eras of JRPGs. Initial ideas for Final Fantasy IV were provided by Sakaguchi, including the entire story and the name of the Red Wings. As the lead designer, Tokita wrote the scenario and contributed pixel art. He has said there was a lot of pressure that the project would not be completed if he did not work diligently on it. Tokita has said that 4 was designed with the best parts of the previous 3 entries in mind. The job system of 3, which is a bit ironic considering 4 lacks the job system mechanic. The focus on the story from 2, and the 4 elemental bosses from the first game. Another influence on the game was Dragon Quest II. Tokita felt that Final Fantasy IV was the first game in the series to really pick up on drama, and the first Japanese RPG to feature deep characters and plot. The graphical capacities of the Super Famicom allowed longtime series character designer Yoshitaka Amano to make more elaborate designs, with the characters' personalities being much more evident from the images. I feel you can really tell this from the sprite images in the game. They are so emotive, especially the twins. They feel much more lively and representative of the characters than the previous entries. The game script had to be reduced to 1/4 of its original length due to the cartridge storage limits. Tokita made sure only unnecessary dialogue was cut, rather than actual story elements. He felt the cut script improved the pacing of the game, though he also stated he felt lots of parts were unclear or not looked at in depth. Luckily, later ports and remakes solved these issues, even adding cut content like the Lunar Dungeon in the later iterations of the game. Final Fantasy IV was completed in roughly 1 year. Overall, it's so interesting just how much history and legacy could spawn from one game. Alongside being one of the most influential and beloved Final Fantasies, 4 is responsible for so much more. So many great games might have ended up differently, or not existed at all, if not for it in some way. It also speaks to the overwhelming talent that existed within the industry and Side Square at the time. It truly is a one-of-a-kind game that's rightfully earned its spot in video game history. The story of FF4 starts with ships flying over land, returning back from wherever they were. You go onto the deck on one of these ships and see a bunch of soldiers, clad in red, surrounding a solemn dark night. There's a heavy feeling in the air as the soldiers express anger and guilt. We learn that the Dark Knight is their leader, and the game's protagonist, Cecil. He's the leader of this elite fighting force, the Red Wings, and we learn the horrors they just committed. They're part of the Kingdom of Baron, which is collecting elemental crystals, and they are now returning from the town of Mystidia, where they slaughtered innocent people trying to protect the water crystal or taking it for themselves. While Cecil does not do the killing himself, his men do it and he does not stop them. Cecil and his men are now questioning their roles and the kingdom's methods, as they were meant to be protecting people and instead are now killing innocents. Cecil tries to justify these actions to himself and his men by saying how Mystidia knows too much about the crystals, and by having one, they are inherently a danger to Baron. He does not truly believe this, however. This is a very poignant start to the game, and out of the first 4, is by far the strongest. It sticks with you, and immediately made me more invested and intrigued by the story, as I'm clearly going to be playing this character that is far more gray than just plain good or bad. These first minutes of the game already had me more invested in the characters and story than I was for any of the previous entries. Once they return to Baron, Cecil questions the king's motives, which leads the king to get angry and demote him of his rank as captain of the Red Wings. He is then told to go with his best friend Kane, captain of the Dragoons, to deliver a ring to the village of the Mist. Sid, the chief engineer of the airships of Baron, hears about this and apologizes to Cecil. He also harbors doubts about the king. He kind of serves as a father-type figure to Cecil in the story. The ring Cecil was told to deliver is a bomber, unbeknownst to the two when they arrive at the village. To their horror, it lets loose a bunch of monsters that decimate the village. Cecil vows to avenge the village and take down Baron. Kane says he will join him in this rebellion. There is only one survivor, a young girl named Rydia, who summons a monster called Titan out of anger. The monster creates an earthquake that ends up separating Cecile and Kane. Once Cecile reawakens after the incident, he takes the wounded Rydia and heads to a nearby inn. Once again, this is a very powerful section of the game, and really does well to show Cecile's complicity. He loves his kingdom, and remembers the times when it was good, and this blinds him. And in that ignorance, he participates in the ruination of the lives of others. This guilt eats at him, as even though he was tricked, he fully knows the part he played in the massacre of these people. This is where he fully flips and goes against Baron. He truly loves his kingdom, and thus he will rebel against it to save it from itself. True patriotism isn't blind obedience. It's doing whatever it takes to make your country a better place. At the inn, while Rydia is resting, Baron soldiers show up and Cecil defends her. Rydia says she will accompany him on this journey. I really enjoy this dynamic of soldier and kid he is partly responsible for orphaning, going on a quest to set things right. As they explore the town, they find Rose, friend of Cecile and Kane, and also Cecile's love interest, sick in one of the houses. She had followed Cecile and is now extremely ill, with the only thing able to cure her being a sand ruby. It is located near Damikin. I'm going to pronounce a lot of these names wrong. You're just going to have to bear with me. And so Cecile and Rydia make their way there. On their way, they run into an old mage, Tella, who is on the way to Damikin Castle to retrieve his eloping daughter. He joins the party and they continue their journey towards Damikin. As the Damikin Castle comes into view of the party, it is bombarded by the Baron Red Wings. The party makes their way through the castle and find Tella's daughter Anna with the man she eloped with, Edward. Edward's actually the Prince of Damikin and was posing as a bard so he could elope with Anna. However, Anna dies in the bombardment from the Red Wings. He informs the party that the new Red Wings commander, Golwood, Golbez. Once again, no idea how to pronounce it. I think I just pronounced it Golbez. He informs the party that the new Red Wings commander, Golbez, did this to get. Wow. He informs the party that the new Red Wing. What? He informs the party that the new Red Wings commander, Golbez, did this to get the fire crystal. Him and Tella have a confrontation before Edward joins your party. Tella leaves the party, hell-bent on gaining revenge on Golbez for the death of his daughter. Once again, I really enjoy how at this point in the story, the game does not hold back. Kingdoms and lives are ruined, and it's the start of Tella's tragic arc, which also marks one of my favorite character arcs in the game. The party makes its way back to the cave where the sand ruby is. They retrieve it and make their way back to Rosa and cure her. Rosa talks to the party about all that's occurred in Baron, and then joins the party. Sid was working on a new type of airship, but hid its location and was arrested by the king. In the middle of the night, Edward wakes up and leaves the house. He talks about how much he misses Anna as he plays his harp. A monster comes out of the water and attacks him. As he fights it, he gets a powerful character moment where he says his last goodbyes to the ghost of Anna. The party decides to go to Fabul to protect the wing crystal. On their way there, they run into a monk-fighting monster sent by Golbez. He introduces himself as Fang. He is the Grand Master of the monks of Fabul, and he joins your party as he is charged with defending the wind crystal. The party makes its way to Fabul, where the king asks him to help the defense against the invasion of Baron. The party agrees. Edward, Yang, and Cecile get sent to defend the entrance while Rosa and Rydia stay behind. During the battle, the party gradually gets pushed back into the throne room. On the way to the crystal room, Edward falls and the party rescues him. They are now pushed back to the actual crystal room where Kane appears, being controlled by Golbez, and defeats Cecile in a one-on-one fight. Golbez shows up afterwards and wipes out the party except for Rydia. He then has Kane take the crystal and Rose before they leave. Rydia revives the party. The party finds a ship in town and starts to sail back to Baron when they are attacked by the Leviathan, which creates a giant whirlpool that destroys the ship. Rydia and Yang are thrown off the boat, and Edward is knocked out alongside Cecile. Cecile wakes up in the wreckage on the beach, and this is the start of what is probably my favorite section of the game. Cecile has landed near Mysidia, the town he took the crystal from at the beginning of the game. He heads there, and the people here will remember him, and several will try to cast spells to try and hurt him. A dancer will turn him into a pig if he watches her dance. A black mage walking around town will turn him into a frog. Even the bartender at the inn will poison him. Cecile makes his way to the building where the Elder is, and talks to him. The Elder realizes Cecile has genuinely changed, and is trying to stop Golbez now. He tells Cecile that he must go to Mount Ordeals, and turn his sword from one of darkness to one of light. To assist, he has two twin apprentice mages accompany Cecile and join the party. They are Parom and Palam, and they both have very distinct personalities from one another, despite being twins. Parom is a devoted and polite white mage. Palam is a cocky black mage who neglects his studies. They are both prodigies and extremely useful in battles and stirring moments to come. I also mentioned this before, but I really love their sprite pictures in the menu and how much it communicates their respective personalities. The party heads to Mount Ordeals and makes their way through until they hit a pathway blocked by fire. Palom puts it out with Blizzard at Parom's request. Then a scene plays showing Golbez sending one of the four elemental fiends, Garmiglione, stop Cecile. He sends the fiend despite Kane wanting to be the one to be sent to stop Cecile. As they continue up the mountain, they find Tella. He is seeking a meteor spell to kill Golbez with, and once again joins the party. Soon after, they are attacked by Scarmiglione. After they beat him once, the fiend attacks once again in its true form as the party is crossing a bridge. They defeat him yet again, and he falls to his doom off the mountain. Now they see a little stone shrine. Cecile goes up and interacts with it. A light calling Cecile's son transports him to a different area, where he must fight the Dark Knight version of himself. Instead of fighting though, as Cecile, you sheath your sword, let the dark version of yourself cast darkness, and inevitably kill itself. With that, Cecile has cast his darkness aside fully, becomes a paladin, and gains the Sword of Legend. Tella also learns the spell Meteor here. As I said before, this is probably my favorite section of the game. While the job system from the previous games is not in 4, I really love that they took the idea of it and used it for such a good storytelling moment. It is probably my favorite character moment in the game. The party heads back to Mystia, and the elders are impressed by Cecile's transformation and thus open a pathway to Baron for them. The party is back in Baron, and nobody recognizes Cecile now that he's a paladin, with many thinking he is now dead. In an inn, they find Yang with some Baron soldiers, and Yang has them attack the party. Once you defeat Yang, you are able to bring him back to his senses, and he rejoins the party. The party talks. Brittany and Edward are thought to be dead, and Taylor mentions how his daughter loved Edward so much she sacrificed herself for him. They then make their way to the castle of Baron. As they make their way through, they run into Bygone, the Chancellor of the King. He acts like he will help them and then joins the party. However, Parom and Palom sense something is off. Bygone knows he is caught and transforms into a monster, attacking the party. They defeat him and head to the throne room to confront the king. Here, it is revealed that the king is long gone, and has been being impersonated by the water fiend, Agnazo. Once the party defeats him, then enters the room and reunites with Cecile. He is going to show the party the location of the Enterprise, the new ship he was building. As the party leaves, Agnazo speaks from the other side and springs one last trap to take the party with him. The walls start to collapse, with no way to stop them. The Zella twins choose to sacrifice themselves by turning to stone and holding the walls back. Ella has a heartfelt moment as they do this, proclaiming how he should be the one to sacrifice himself as he's the old one and they are still kids. After this is done, there is seemingly no way to change the twins back, as they chose to turn themselves to stone. This moment actually hit me quite a bit, as I had taken a decent break from the game and had just returned. I had also just been thinking about how endearing I found the twins and their little quips back and forth, and how useful they were to the party, in story, and in gameplay. I also think it makes for a great little moment for Tella, showing us just how wounded he is by watching all these young people die or sacrifice themselves around him. He's like the ultimate case of survival guilt in this story. Sid shows the party the Enterprise, and they take it into the air. Kane shows up on one of his own and offers an exchange: the Earth Crystal for Rosa. The party decides that there is no other option and head for the town called Troya. Here, the party will find Edward recovering from the shipwreck. They catch him up to all that's happened and he gives them a twin harp. He is still recovering and thus unable to join the party. The Sion gang then head to the clerics of the town that tell him of a cave nearby where a dark elf has the Earth Crystal. The party heads there. The gimmick of this cave is that it's called Magnetic Cave for a reason. You cannot have any metal equipment equipped. This severely debuffs the party. When they make it to the dark elf inside, they are very easily defeated by his magic. Back in town, Edward senses the party's pain and plays a song he was taught that was rumored to harm elves. Fairly enough, this song distracts and weakens the dark elf. You can re-equip your party with their metal gear now and fight the dark elf once again, defeating it this time. Cecile gets the Earth Crystal and they make their way back to Troya. Go to Edward and he'll express his relief that everyone is okay, and has a moment with Tella where Tella finally fully acknowledges his worth, and that he was worth his daughter's love and to heal up. As Cecil informs the clerics that the crystal is retrieved, Kane communicates to him that he knows the crystal has been taken and he is ready for the exchange. The party gets into their airship, which is then intercepted by Kane's. He leads the party to the Tower of Zot, where the exchange will take place. When they finally make it to the summit for the exchange, big surprise, Gomez doesn't plan to honor the deal and takes the crystal. Tella finally snaps and casts Meteor on him, which shocks and weakens Gomez, but fails to kill him. It does, however, break his spell over Kane. Gomez gets away, and the cost of the spell is ultimately Tella's life. His last words are him admitting that he let his hatred consume him, bringing an end to his tragic arc. Kane apologizes for his brainwashed actions, and the party saves Rosa, who also joins the party. They then battle the third elemental fiend, Arboritia. After defeating the fiend, the tower starts to collapse. Arosa teleports them out, and they head back to Baron. Kane informs the party of Golbez's plans, that there are crystals equivalent to light crystals in the underworld called dark crystals. Very clever name. And once you have them all, it opens a path to the moon, though Kane doesn't know why Golbez wants to go there. He also hands over the magma rock, which is the key to getting to the underworld, so the party can get to the dark crystals first. The party heads to a town called Agard, and drops the magma rock in the well in the center of town. This causes the mountain range north of it to burst open, allowing the party to fly the airship in and into the underworld. The Red Wings have once again beat the party there, however. God knows how, really. How the fuck did they even get to the underworld, now that I think about it? I thought the only way there was the range. The Red Wings then begin bombing the dwarves. Yeah, okay, vibe change. The Enterprise gets damaged in these attacks and has to land. It lands near a castle, which the party heads into and meets King Giat. Not that kind of Giat. Who informs Cecile that 2 of the dark crystals have already been taken, but they managed to protect his, which is hidden behind his throne room. King then notices that the party is being spied on, and they head to the room behind the throne room and are attacked by monstrous dolls. After bringing the dolls, Golbez himself shows up and talks about how the moon contains incredible power, which he plans to get. The party fights him, but everyone is wiped out besides Cecile. Rydia suddenly appears, now looking like an adult, and together with Cecile, they beat Golbez. With Golbez defeated, Rydia tells the party how she ended up in the Land of Summons, where she learned her new magic. Time flows differently there, which is why she now appears older. She rejoins your party, and as you're talking with her, Golbez sneakily grabs the dark crystal and teleports away. The party hatches a plan to try and steal all the crystals as Golbez prepares to take the last one. They head to the Tower of Babel, where Golbez has stored the crystals. There are a bunch of dwarf tanks attacking the tower, providing distractions so the party can enter the tower. As they make their way through the tower, they defeat a crazy doctor and get a key to the cannon room. Goblin captains are manning it and shooting at the dwarves. After you defeat them, they lock the cannons so the party cannot stop them manually. Yang pushes the party out of the room and seemingly sacrifices himself to stop the cannons. The party learns that the crystals have been moved to a surface level part of the tower, and thus head out. As they leave on the bridge, Golbez destroys it in an attempt to kill them, but Sid saves them just in time with the airship. They manage to outrun the Red Wings and head back to the surface, where Sid jumps off the airship and blows himself up to seal the hole back up so no one can follow the party. Say what you like about him, he knows how to go out with a bang. Seal and the gang head back to Baron, where they get an airship upgrade from Sid's engineers. They can proceed to the Cave of Elblin, which will allow them to get to the Tower of Babel's surface level. Seal tries to tell the engineers about Sid's sacrifice, but they essentially won't hear it out, as they believe Sid to be unkillable. With this upgrade, the party makes its way to the Cave of Eblin. Here they learn about Eblin's ruling, and the death of the king and queen, and the Prince of Eblin is ahead in the cave seeking revenge. The party eventually catches up to the prince, Edge, and find him mouthing off to the most powerful of the 4 elemental fiends, Rubicante. The 2 battle, and Rubicante leaves, but not before praising the prince for his attempt. Your party heals him up, and he immediately starts trying to flirt with Rydia as he joins the party. Once again, the party enters the Tower of Babel thanks to Edge's help, and makes their way through it. Eventually they run into Edge's parents, the king and queen of Eblin, who have been transformed into monsters. They manage to break free from their urges and talk to Edge, expressing their sorrow and apologies that their time is up now. They pass away, and Edge learns some new ninjutsu. Rubicante shows up, and the party defeats him, causing him to retreat. I should also mention, I believe at this point Rubicante actually heals your party before you fight him. He's the most gentlemanly of the elemental fiends. Anyway, after the fight, Edge now decides to accompany the party on their quest to stop Golbez. Finally, they make it to the crystal room, but fall into a trapdoor. They manage to find an airship and escape, but are now once again back in the underworld. Zil heads back to the castle of King Giat, who gives them his daughter's necklace, which unlocks the sealed cave where the last crystal is. They find Sid resting out from his injuries in the castle. He survived his suicide bomb attempt, God knows how. He upgrades the airship so it can fly over magma, so he can make it to the sealed cavern. This takes up all his energy, however, and he returns to bed to continue healing. The team makes their way to the cave and gets the last crystal, but on the way out, Golbez regains control over Kane yet again. Kane manages to make off with the last crystal. Now Golbez can go to the moon. Once again, the party heads back to King Giat, who informs them of the Lunar Whale, a mythical giant airship from Mysidian legend. Sid attaches a drill to the airship so the party can dig back into the overworld before going back to rest. They dig out into the overworld and make their way to Mysidia, where the elders take them to a tower to pray. This causes the mythical Lunar Whale to appear. The seal talks to a crystal on the ship, and it transports them to the moon. After flying around the moon, they find a crystal palace and enter. Here they meet Fusoya. Fusoya tells Cecile about the race of Lunarians who live on the moon, how one of them was Cecile's father. He then talks about Zemus, an evil one full of hatred who has been influencing Golbez. Afterwards, he joins the party. Once again, we talk to the crystal and return to Earth. When they arrive, however, a giant earthquake occurs, and a giant emerges from the Tower of Babel and starts destroying the land around it. Giat arrives with some dwarven tanks and begins to attack the giant. Yang is in one of these tanks, also having survived his apparent sacrifice. Then an airship appears and starts to attack the giant as well. On board are Sid, Edward, and Palam and Param. The twins got restored from stone by the Elder. These attacks allow Cecile and his party to go inside the giant. As they recede through, the four elemental fiends show up once again, having been resurrected. The party defeats them all once again, this time for good. The party proceeds to the center of the giant and destroys its CPU, causing it to begin to self-destruct. Golbez once again appears, and Fusoya confronts him and uses his energy to break Golbez free from the spell of Zemus. It is revealed that Golbez is Cecile's brother. Gasp. Golbez now swears to confront Zemus and get revenge. Fusoya leaves the party and joins him. Kane once again shows up like your ex you want to forget about. Now free from his spell as well, helps the party escape, showing remorse for his actions yet again, just like that ex. Cecile and the party decide to head to the moon and help defeat Zemus. They head back to the moon and the Crystal Palace where they found Fusoya. In standard Final Dungeon fashion, there are a bunch of boss battles littered throughout that contain the best equipment in the game. Eventually the party catches up to Golbez and Fusoya, who are confronting Zemus. Fusoya and Golbez launch a bunch of powerful spells at Zemus and manage to defeat him. However, his spirits are born from his hate, and he becomes a Zeromus, and is much more powerful. He easily defeats the two, with Golbez trying to use a crystal to make him vulnerable, but being unable to because he traveled the dark path. He also wipes out Cecile and gang. It then cuts to a scene of all the characters we have met on our travels at the Tower of Mysidia. They all pray, including the ghost of Pella, and revive your party. Cecile gets the crystal from Golbez and uses it, making Zeromus more vulnerable. With this, the party fights and defeats Zeromus for good. Afterwards, Golbez decides to join Fusoya, as he does not believe he can return home with all the bad he's done, and he wants to meet his father's people. As he gets ready to leave, Cecile forgives him and acknowledges him as his brother. Now it's time for the epilogue. We go through scenes and see where every character ended up. The twins are back to training their magic with the Elder. Edge has become the ruler of Eblin and is fighting with his administrator about the responsibility of it. Rydia returns to the land of summons and helps the beings there. Yang becomes a king, I don't know of where, probably Fabul. I don't think it really elaborates. He also just kind of becomes a king randomly. Like, I don't know if he ever expressed he wanted to become one. Edward's working on fixing his ruined kingdom. The dwarves also begin rebuilding, using the parts from their tanks, as finally there is peace. Cecile and Rosa become king and queen of Baron. Kane feels guilty over being controlled in his actions. He goes into self-exile in Mount Ordeals, determined to stay in exile until he surpasses his father as a dragoon. Sid is also back in Baron. Cecile hears Golbez's voice tell him so long. The game finally ends, with everyone attending the wedding of Cecile and Rosa. The story of FF4 is ultimately a beautiful one of hope and redemption. It has its faults, like pretty much every character sacrifice not actually meaning anything when only one of them is permanent. I do think there's some powerful symbolism, and the only sacrifice being permanent is the one that was done out of hatred, and not the urge to protect others. I also think the story reflects the overall theme the creators had when they first began the process of making this game, which was the idea of going from dark to light. The story starts off dark, with innocent people dying, war, betrayal, and it gets lighter in the fact that all these deaths you think happened didn't actually happen, and everyone kind of comes together to beat the big bad. Also, just like 3, there's a mysterious powerful entity that's actually in control behind the evil wizard. That felt a little recycled considering it was just the last game that it happened to. This one easily has the most memorable story and cast of characters so far though. All in all, it has a special place to me now, and it is my favorite one of the ones I've played so far. Now let's get into characters. Cecile is far and away the best protagonist so far in the series. I don't think that's saying much. I love that they actually show him committing these crimes, even though he is questioning his king. It makes his guilt so much stronger, especially when he's made complicit in yet another atrocity with the Village of the Mist. Seeing his guilt drive him and how he begins to fight to change the kingdom he loves is very powerful. I also like how angelic his design comes off as, and how it contrasts his look at the beginning of the game. Going from his dark role he's been forced into, to the more natural bringer of light with the paladin that much more fits him as someone who ultimately wants to protect. Him being a Lunarian and the brother of Golbez did feel unnecessary to me. Felt like unfleshed out additions just meant to add more dramatic flair towards the end. All in all, Cecile has secured a special place to me as the first Final Fantasy protagonist that feels really dynamic in his character. My feelings for Kain are a bit of a paradox, just like the character himself. I like the concept of him, but the result of him being brainwashed for such a good portion of the game makes it so much harder for me to connect to him. I admire his strong loyalty towards Cecile and Rosa. That's one of the few character traits I really know about him. His brainwashing the story alongside him, just not having too many character moments in general, makes him in large part a mystery, which in itself fits him. He's this stoic, broody dragoon with one of the coolest designs ever. I do appreciate the self-exile he does at the end, as it reminds me of a better done Leon from Final Fantasy II. Also thinking back on FF2 here made me realize Kain is a nod to Dragoon's son from 2, who shares the same name. Kain is simultaneously a mystery which I like, while also wishing I knew more about him. Rosa is one of those characters I'm honestly not going to have much to say about. She really kind of just feels like Cecile's love interest and not much more. Takeda has a moment in an interview for FF4's 30th anniversary where he mentions he thinks it might have been better to develop Rosa's character more. Rosa is goated gameplay wise though, as the most consistent white mage you will have throughout the game. Probably the most useful party member, especially in the last couple boss fights where you need to be healing essentially every turn. Rydia ended up being one of the most intriguing characters to me, and I wish we spent more time with her. I was already biased towards her dynamic with Cecile, but it did not get utilized quite enough in my opinion. Her powers of summoning are also quite cool, but in some of the later boss fights, they just take too long to be an actual asset. The way she also figuratively and then literally loses her childhood to this war is also very powerful, with her coming back from the land of summons in an older body due to the way time flows. Ultimately, this is a child who has sacrificed her childhood to help win this war. This also adds a bit more tragedy to her character, as she returns there at the end of the story, so who knows how many years are going to get cut from her life. Kella ended up being one of my favorite and most tragic characters of the cast. The themes of loss and survivor's guilt that surround him are very poignant, with one of the strongest scenes in the game to me being when the twins are sacrificing themselves, and he runs up to them saying how young they are, and how it should have been him instead. This is a man who has watched young people die, including his daughter, who all sacrificed themselves around him, and it fills him with this intense survival's guilt, this suicidal edge, and most of all, hatred. This hatred ends up getting the best of him. Out of anger, he tries to kill Golbez and ends up dying in the process. As I mentioned, I am a bit mixed in all of the fake-out sacrifices that happen in this game, but I do find it very hard-hitting that the one that sticks is the one ultimately selfish and hate-filled in nature. Tail is not fully doomed, of course, as he shows up as a ghost during the prayer scene at the final boss fight, but he is beautifully tragic all the same. Edward is a classic and charming case of someone more timid growing in courage, and I like him for his simple arc. Of all the rulers at the end, I expect he'll be one of the most loved by his people. He also gets some of the best character moments with his goodbye to Anna, and later on helping the party defeat the Dark Elf. He's one of those characters that does not seem too instrumental at first. Get it, he's a bard? But now, I can't imagine the game without him. He adds a very human touch to the cast. Yang is a bit one note, and so I don't have too much to say about him. I like the moment with his wife at the beginning. He's also one of the better party members to me, as I really like the monk class in these games so far. Other than that, he's a fairly typical stoic warrior. No hate on that though. Palom and Porum surprised me with just how endearing I found them. Their sprite pictures are the most expressive in the series so far, perfectly capturing their enigmatic and eccentric personalities. Their banter was super charming with each other, and they are some of the more useful party members, not just in gameplay, but the actual narrative. They had a lot of levity to the cast, and the story, which makes their sacrifice scene that much more powerful. At the end of the day, I am glad their sacrifice in particular was not permanent. Sid in this game acts as the little bit goofy, father-like figure that can get away with talking to Cecile in ways that others might not be able to. I appreciated him for this role he serves. He's also easily the most memorable version of Sid so far out of the first 4 games. Also, one of the most important characters narratively, as without him in the airship, the party does not make it to a lot of the places they need to go. I really like the interactions you have with his underlings when the party thinks he's dead. Him just not even registering as a possibility really speaks a lot to his dynamic with them, and just how much they admire him. Edge is kind of like a more immature Edward in the way he adds a lot of humanity to the story, and also reluctantly accepts his responsibilities at the end of the story. From the start, his abrasiveness and mindless flirting with Rydia adds a lot of levity to the moments in the cast, especially at this more solemn part of the game. His moment with his parents as they die serves as a great character moment. The child is more to this abrasive ninja prince and how he mirrors Rydia in losing his childhood. He may be immature, abrasive, and flirtatious, but he will fight for what is right. Also, he just sports a really fucking cool design. Usoya joins very late in the game, and he does make an impression even if he does not get remotely close to the likes of someone like Tella. I really like the mono illustration of him as he is just all beard. It really makes him feel like this ethereal mystic being, much better than the in-game sprite. Honestly, his main purpose is to give exposition, and so I do not have too much to say about him. I do enjoy his battle with Zemus and the beginnings of his relationship with Golbez. Golbez is a bit hard for me to decide my feelings on, as I like him as his antagonistic force for most of the game. But similar to 3, he ends up being the pawn of another, even if this one is much more forced with the mind control. I also feel like him being Cecile's brother was a bit forced and unneeded. I wish he got fleshed out more towards the end of the game, and they explained exactly how he felt to Zemus, and what the dark path he was traveling down that made him susceptible to Zemus was. I did really enjoy his moment with Cecile at the end, with Cecile acknowledging him as his brother though. He's a character I would definitely like to see expanded on, and I know he shows up in FF14, so I wonder if they do some of that there. Zemus is just someone I have no real feelings for. To me, he's just kind of another boring big bad with very superficial goals that are explained by someone else. He does not really show much personality, and you only deal with him at the very end of the game. All in all, he is just another bland big bad that continues the trend of FF villains being a weak point of the games. Which really sucks so far because I'm a big villain lover, and in a series as dramatic as this one, you think you get some more memorable ones. I am expecting this to change in games like 6 and 7 though, as people always rave about the villains of those ones. Rubicante is the one fiend I wanted to bring up here, as he has the most interesting personality of all the fiends and villains in general, really. I liked his gentlemanly disposure, and how he acknowledges edges and the party's strength, and will even heal them before he fights. It was a nice change from the other cartoonishly evil fiends in the game. He also had my favorite design of the 4 fiends. Final Fantasy IV marks the departure of the traditional turn-based combat system. It is the beginning of the active time battle system, which should be used for the next handful of games as well. Essentially, next to each character you see a little bar that speeds up at various speeds depending on the character, and once it's filled, that character can move. So some characters can move much faster, but their attacks are weaker. Others are slower but hit harder. When your mages are casting spells, it also takes time. Do not use the spells right away. Going into your item and battle menus does not stop time by default, though there is an option to make it so when you're casting or in the item menu, the bars freeze. So whatever actions you are doing, take up that time, and thus moving slow or hesitating can make it so enemies are attacking you way more, as their bars are continuing to move as well. Apparently, the designer of the system, Hiroyuki Ito, got the idea of this system from watching a Formula 1 race, as it gave him the idea of different speed values for different characters. Honestly, overall, at least for right now, I do prefer the standard turn-based style of gameplay. I'm kind of biased towards it, as I really like the more chill style of being able to think and decide what to do, just take my time. The active time system does make it much more engaging, in that you're much more actively in the game and battles as you want to think and pick fast to avoid getting attacked by a bunch of enemies a bunch of times. I did have the option switched on for the freezing during items and mages for a good bit, as I was getting used to the new system. I had it off by the end though. I was getting into the system, so perhaps I will enjoy it more in its iterations in the later games. I love how much of the story is communicated through gameplay. A good bit of the story moments like Edward saying goodbye to Anna, or Edge's moment with his parents are done in a battle screen. You actually watch Gomez and Fusoya fight the final boss and get defeated. It really enhances these moments, makes them feel more real and have a lot more weight. This is not the first game to do that. All of the first 3 also did stuff like that. I particularly loved how it was done in 4. The biggest criticism I have with the gameplay is that battles become very one-note for the most part. Outside of some gimmicks, most bosses are resistant to all magic or have no weaknesses, and so pretty much every battle to the very end boils down to Rose and Rydia provide support and healing. Very occasionally it might be worth using Rydia's summoning or dark magic, but typically I found that she dies a lot and it ends up being better to just leave her dead. Kane uses jump, Edge and Cecile do physical attacks. This is pretty much the optimal strategy for every single fight, including the final boss. Mixing it up will just get you killed or make things way harder. Magic being so worthless for so much of the game does suck, as you have all these cool spells that just sit there. I hope in later ones they make it so once again magic is a viable strategy. Overall, I found this game to be the hardest of the first 4 by a good bit. With the active time battle system, this game is much more about learning the mechanics, rather than just being able to do whatever and win on the first try for the most part, like in the previous games. Some side notes. I really love the art in this game. In the sprite direction, as I mentioned, every character really stands out in their designs. The soundtrack is also great, particularly the overworld theme. I started Final Fantasy IV, and my expectations were decently high, as I heard this was a great Final Fantasy game, but I still didn't really know what to expect. It's safe to say my expectations were blown out the water still, as I was not expecting to be so invested in the characters and story. This is what I always imagined when I thought of Final Fantasy. Deep character storytelling alongside an epic story. Final Fantasy IV is really such a special game that has led to so many titans of the genre, all while being one itself. It is the end of a lot of things that occurred in the first 3, but also much more of a continuation and start to so much more of what the series would become. As a result, it also has a special place to me now in this journey through the Final Fantasy games, which is why I wanted to talk so much more about it. This video is going to be a bit of an outlier, with me going more in depth into the story and some of the history behind it. I probably won't be doing it with later entries, especially things like 6 and 7, which have been talked to death by everyone. New thing I'm trying, and just because it's so special to me. Final Fantasy is the push I finally used to start this channel. It's my first video, and the journey really has elevated now. Each game I play, I look forward a little bit more to the next one. I look forward to continuing to document this journey. I'm just a curious skeleton, and I'll see you next time.